The fog clung low to the earth, crawling like wounded things across the dead grass. Beyond the warped iron gates, at the end of a gravel path scattered with dead birds and shattered glass, the house waited. Duskwither Hill had long been abandoned, the estate left to rot into memory, but now someone had returned. Elena Greaves pressed her hand against the stone pillar at the gate, her breath ragged in the cold. She'd inherited the house from an uncle she never met, a man the town refused to speak of. The solicitor's voice still echoed in her mind. "It's yours now, by blood and by right." She almost didn't come, but something had called her, in dreams that weren't dreams. A voice like wet paper tearing, whispering from corners of shadow, promising answers to questions she didn't remember asking. And now, standing in front of the gate, the air itself felt different. Pressurized. Watching. The hinges groaned as she pushed the gate open. It didn't squeal, it screamed. The house loomed ahead, 3 stories of crumbling stone and sunken windows that blinked like eyes struggling to remain closed. Ivy like black veins wrapped around its frame, and at the highest peak, the lightning rod twitched slightly, as if sensing her. Inside, the silence was a living thing. She stepped onto the porch. The boards sagged beneath her, creaking with voices too old to understand. The key worked, surprisingly, and the door swung open to darkness that didn't welcome her, it absorbed her. Dust and decay layered every surface, but there was no smell. No mildew. No rot. Just silence. The kind that presses against your skull, pressing inward. As she explored, the layout of the house shifted subtly. A hallway that led left now led right. A door she entered through no longer existed when she turned to leave. She wrote it off as stress, fatigue. But there was a deeper knowing inside her, a primitive suspicion, that this house did not want to be understood. She found a room with wallpaper that peeled like shedding skin. In its center stood a single object, a mirror. Cracked, antique, framed in rotting silver. She approached. The reflection was wrong. Her face was there, but her eyes were missing, 2 cavernous voids weeping something dark and slow. And her mouth was open too wide, the skin split and stretching, but she wasn't screaming. Her reflection was. She staggered back, knocking over a small wooden stool. It hit the floor with a wet thud, like raw meat. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. No one. Yet the mirror still trembled, and her breath now fogged in the air. She was no longer alone. The room was no longer the same. Elena stepped backward toward the hall, but the doorway had vanished. Where it had once been, the wallpaper stretched unbroken, pulsing faintly like skin over bone. Panic twisted in her gut. She turned back to the mirror. It was no longer cracked. It gleamed, spotless, pristine. And occupied. Her reflection now stood. Motionless, mimicking nothing. It stared directly at her, face twisted into an expression she didn't recognize, vacant, but gleeful. The eyes were still black voids, but something inside them flickered. Movement. Awareness. Then it smiled. Slowly. Deliberately. Elena screamed and turned, striking the wall with her fists, clawing at the paper until her fingers bled. The wood beneath it was warm. And pulsing. Beating. Get out. Get out. Get out. Something gave behind her, not the wall, but the air. A rupture. She spun. The mirror was gone. So was the stool. So was the room. She now stood in a hallway lined with portraits. Dozens of them, all the same face. Her face. Staring blankly. Watching. In each frame, she aged. First a child. Then a teen. Then herself. Then older. Then, decayed. The final painting showed her skin sloughing from her skull, her mouth gaping and stretched in a permanent scream. Worms writhed in the empty sockets. She stepped backward, and felt breath on her neck. Slow, cold, wet. She didn't turn. She couldn't. Instead, she ran, down the hall, her footsteps muffled, not by the carpet but by the house itself. It swallowed sound. The walls seemed to lean in as she moved, doorways slamming shut just before she reached them, paintings turning to face her as she passed. Finally, a door opened. She stumbled into a room lit by a dozen candles, all unmoving, as though frozen mid-flicker. Books lined every wall, titles etched in languages she didn't know. One sat open on a podium in the center, its pages flipping slowly as though moved by an invisible hand. She approached, breath ragged. The writing shifted before her eyes. Spirals. Claw marks. Then, words. It is not the house that is haunted. It is you. Suddenly, the candles flared with sickly green fire, illuminating something she hadn't noticed, symbols carved into the wooden beams. Spirals, claws, eyes, a gaping mouth, the same ones from the mirror's frame. She was shaking. The book flipped again. You were born of this place. Your blood remembers. It is why you returned. No, she whispered. She didn't remember. She'd never been here. This place was an inheritance, not a memory. And yet, the corners of the room darkened. Shadows crawled from beneath the furniture. A whisper echoed from behind her ear, but came from inside her head. You never left. The book slammed shut. Every candle extinguished at once. And in the pitch-black silence, something breathed. The darkness in the library was alive. It pressed against Elena's skin like water, thick and suffocating. She stumbled backward until her back hit the podium, her hands groping blindly for something, anything, familiar. But the room was no longer a room. It was a throat, and it was closing. Then, a soft creak. A light. A candle relit itself, its flame cold blue. Then another, and another, until a ring of unnatural fire illuminated the space, now transformed. The books were gone. The shelves had melted into fleshy walls, and where the podium had stood was now an altar of bone. Shapes stirred in the corners, not quite human, their forms elongated and broken, as if reassembled incorrectly. They whispered her name, not aloud, not exactly, but from beneath the skin of the world. Elena. She turned to flee, and the room let her. A door waited, one she hadn't seen before, open and breathing softly. She stepped through, and found herself in a nursery. Dust-choked moonlight spilled through a cracked window. The crib sat in the center, empty. The mobile above it spun slowly, though the air was still. Painted animals dangled lifelessly, their faces worn smooth by time or hands. A music box on a shelf began to play on its own. A lullaby. She felt a memory crawl up her spine, uninvited. The scent of lavender. The weight of arms that were not her mother's. A voice cooing to her in a language not spoken in this world. And then, the scream. So high-pitched it shattered the silence, and the mobile glass and wood rained down, cutting her face, her arms. She staggered back, blood dripping, and the crib was no longer empty. A bundle. Swaddled in rotting cloth. It twitched. She stepped forward. The cloth shifted. Something looked up at her. It was her face, but smaller, softer, infantile. Its eyes opened, two hollow voids. It screamed, and so did she. When she blinked, the crib was gone. The nursery faded into shadow. But the crying persisted, not just from one place, but many, as if 1,000 unseen infants wept from within the walls. She fell to her knees, clutching her ears. Why? She sobbed. The answer came as a whisper from the floorboards. Because you forgot. We did not. The crying stopped. Footsteps approached, small, rapid, bare. Children. She looked up. Figures stood in the room now. Dozens. All child-sized. Their faces blank. Skin gray. Their mouths sewn shut with thread the color of bone. One raised a hand and pointed at her. From behind them, the mirror appeared again, hanging in mid-air, spinning slowly. She saw her reflection. But it wasn't her anymore. It was the version from the portraits. Hollow-eyed, screaming silently. And behind her stood something massive. A towering figure, wrapped in darkness. Its face hidden beneath a veil stitched with human teeth. The mirror cracked, and whispered, "Mother." Elena stumbled backward, away from the floating mirror, away from the pale, eyeless children that stared without seeing. Her knees hit the floor, hands trembling as she pushed herself upright. But the room was shrinking, the ceiling lowering, the walls inching inward with every heartbeat. She screamed. The children didn't move, they only watched. And then, they stepped aside. The veil moved before she saw the figure. A slow, dragging rustle like fabric soaked in something thick. The mirror shattered completely, shards floating mid-air like suspended time. Through their fractured reflections, Elena glimpsed it. The thing that had always been waiting. 10 feet tall. Draped in rotting funeral cloth that rippled with things underneath. Its veil pulsed, as if breathing, and beneath it, where a face should be, were rows and rows of teeth. Not human teeth, infant teeth, milk white and sharp, packed impossibly tight. Its arms hung long, boneless, wrapped in trailing bandages that crawled on their own. And around its feet, the ground died. With every step, the wooden floor curled, blackened, crumbled into ash. The children fell to their knees in perfect unison. You were born of the hollow. Elena didn't hear the voice so much as absorb it, a sound like whispers inside her veins. You are the key, the gate, the vessel. No, she said, choking on her own breath. I don't belong here. I don't even know what this place is. The veiled one stopped. From behind its veil came a sound like a wet laugh being choked. Then it lunged, but not at her, at the floor. Its clawed fingers slammed into the boards, tearing a spiral into the house itself. Reality bent. The walls peeled back like wet paper, revealing a chasm beneath the nursery. Not earth, not stone, just void, and from it rose hands. Dozens, hundreds, gray and shriveled, reaching. Not to harm, to pull, to embrace. She screamed again and turned to run, but this time the house did not bend to her. The hallway was there, the stairs, the front door, open. She didn't question why. She fled. Outside, the storm had broken. Rain lashed her skin like nails. Lightning split the sky above the forest, revealing the gnarled, skeletal trees leaning inward, branches swaying to a wind that didn't touch her. The air boiled. Fog spiraled upward from the earth, and in it, faces screamed, faces she almost recognized. Her reflection. The infant in the crib. Her mother, dead years ago. A man with black eyes, her uncle? A voice boomed across the landscape, ancient and cracked. You cannot run from what you were carved from. The house behind her breathed in. The trees bent lower. The forest moved. And then, the mirror was in front of her again, hanging in the air, now the size of a door. Its surface shimmered like water. Within it stood the veiled one. Not approaching, not moving, just waiting. A black line began to crawl down Elena's face, from the corner of her eye to the base of her throat, as if the mirror were marking her. Branding her, claiming her. She dropped to her knees in the mud, screaming. And the sky split open. The storm didn't end. Not outside. Not inside her. Elena ran until her body gave out, collapsing beneath the twisted branches of the forest that wrapped the house like ribs around a heart. The trees loomed, hunched, skeletal things with bark like burned flesh and knots shaped like mouths. Some of them opened when she passed. Some of them whispered her name. She crawled into the roots of a dying yew tree and curled there, shivering, mud caked to her skin, her breath coming in ragged bursts. You are the key. She clutched her ears. You are the gate. She dug her nails into her scalp until blood joined the rain. You are the hollow. She screamed, and this time, the forest answered. 100 screams rose around her, from the trees, the dirt, the sky. Every branch above trembled. Lightning cracked again, and in its blinding white flash, she saw figures, not just one, but dozens, hanging from the trees. Not by rope, by roots, burrowed into their spines. She scrambled back, but the tree behind her pulsed. The bark parted, revealing something beneath it, a mural, etched in sap and bone. It showed a child, a newborn, lifted in the arms of robed figures. The baby's face had been gouged out. Surrounding the child were spirals, glyphs, symbols Elena had seen before, on the beams, on the mirror, inside her mind. At the base of the mural, a woman on her knees, hands outstretched, screaming. Her face. It was Elena's mother. And next to her, standing behind the child, holding the veil, was the figure. The veiled one. Lightning struck the tree. The mural burned. Elena didn't run this time. She remembered. Fragments poured back into her. Dreams she'd had as a child. The man with black eyes standing at the foot of her bed. A voice telling her not yet. Her mother's fear when Elena cried at night, not from nightmares, but from the truth clawing its way through her blood. She was born in this place. Not in the city. Not in the hospital. Here, in the house on Duskwither Hill. And something was taken from her. Or left behind. She returned. Whether hours or days later, she didn't know. Time had unraveled around her. The house welcomed her now. Doors opened before she touched them. Lights flickered on in anticipation. The rooms no longer shifted to confuse her. They waited, ready. The grand staircase led her down. Below, to the foundation, to the room beneath the house that hadn't existed on any blueprint. The descent was slow, dozens of steps carved from bone-pale stone, slick with old blood and something thicker. The air changed. It became sweet, rot sweet, womb sweet. The walls pulsed. And at the end of the stairwell, a massive circular chamber. The ceiling curved above like the inside of a skull. In the center, a pit. Within the pit, a cradle. Elena approached, heart pounding in rhythm with the house. She looked inside. There was no child, just a piece of her. A sliver, a shard, something that had been cut from her before she could speak. Something that had been fed to the hollow. And it moved. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat. A sliver of flesh, no larger than a fingertip, resting in the center of the cradle, cradled by strands of black umbilical root. It quivered when Elena leaned closer. Not with fear, with recognition. She knew what it was before her mind could accept it. A cut, not metaphorical, literal. A part of her, taken as an infant, severed and preserved. Not to destroy, not to hide, to sow. This place, this house, had fed on it. Watered it with blood, with memories, with the suffering of all who had entered and never left. And now the piece called to her. Elena reached out. Her hand hovered above it, trembling violently. And then it rose. Not from her hand, from within her chest. Pain bloomed beneath her sternum, deep and spreading, like something tearing loose from her ribs. She screamed, collapsing to her knees, one hand on the cradle, the other clawing at her shirt as blood poured from her mouth. The thing in the cradle pulsed faster. It grew. Veins spread from it, reaching outward like tendrils, slithering over the edge of the pit, up her arm, across her collarbone. She tried to stand, but her legs no longer listened. The chamber spun. The walls breathed. And then, the veiled one entered. It did not walk. It unfolded from the shadows, as if it had always been there, watching through cracks in time. The veil twitched with excitement, the rows of infant teeth behind it clicking rapidly, like bone chimes in a storm. The seed is waking. The voice tore through her mind, not in words, but images. Births reversed. Umbilical cords wrapping around necks. 1,000 eyes blinking open in unison beneath the earth. You are the vessel. The hollow must be filled. The cradle split open. Inside, the sliver was no longer a fragment. It was a heart, beating, glowing faintly with dark blue light, pulsing like something trying to remember how to live. Elena's body convulsed. She screamed as her spine arched unnaturally, bones cracking, blood pouring from her eyes. The heart rose into the air. Then it plunged, into her chest. Her body seized, hovering inches off the floor as tendrils wrapped around her like vines, threading into her skin, digging through her muscles, latching to her bones. She could not scream anymore. Only watch. And then, silence. Elena lay still. The tendrils retreated, the light faded, and her eyes opened, but they were no longer hers. They were empty. The veiled one stepped forward, kneeling before her as a supplicant before a god. The gate is open. Far above, the house groaned. Across the land, trees bowed. And in the far corners of the world, things began to move. Things that had waited for her to remember.